So why do we use anchors? Like I've got 2 chains right here. Why don't I just like throw the rope through those chains? We all do a top rope lap and then we pull the rope and no one has to go back up.
To reduce the wear on the stuff that's out there.
Exactly. You know, all this fixed gear, someone went to a lot of work to put it in. And if you top rope, if a rope's going through this stuff weighted, it's gonna wear it out super fast. Especially so in the desert, and especially so like this when the sand gets a little wet, because it kind of sticks to the rope, and then it makes the rope more abrasive, and it's amazing how quickly things will wear out. This carabiner is probably only a few months old, and look at it, that's just from belaying and rappelling on it here in the desert. So stuff wears out really quick and we want this gear to last. So manufacturer's recommendations for wear on like carabiners, belay devices is 1 millimeter of wear. And so the way you'd measure that is just put it up next to a new one and kind of use something to measure that. Once a good groove starts to get in there, I get too much friction on the rope and it kind of makes it difficult to use. When you see people clean anchors, go back and get the gear at the end of the day, there's 2 ways to do it. They can go up, untie, feed the rope through and get lowered, or they can go up, rig the rope to the middle through these anchors and then rappel down. So when you get down to the bottom and you come off rappel, you pull the rope and it's going through here with no weight at all. So if you lower, it's the weighted rope on there, and although it's just one time for every group, it's still gonna wear the stuff out quicker. So generally preferred to rappel. Sometimes on like super overhanging sport routes, it's tough to like rappel down and clean the gear, so it's a little bit more acceptable to just be lowered down at that point. The most common mistake where people get hurt, and super experienced people have gotten hurt before, is the belayer thinks that I'm gonna rappel. I think that I'm gonna be lowered. I go up, I clean the anchor, I say take, I lean back, and no one's holding the other end of the rope. You know, nice quiet crag like this probably wouldn't happen, but if there's like a road or a river or something down here where there's a lot of people climbing, speaking over each other, like that communication could happen very simple. So first thing is I'm gonna have a discussion with my belayer, and I'm gonna go up, I'm just gonna wrap down, so once you take me off belay, you're good to go.
Okay, so
Sweet.
you're gonna rappel down?
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome. I'm all speed buckles on my harness. I got a good knot through both my tying points.
Okay, I
Can I just
gotcha.
see your waist since we haven't climbed anything today? You got a speed buckle? Awesome. For cleaning, there's 3 steps. I look at like 3 big steps instead of like trying to remember every little thing, because anchor configurations are always gonna be different at the top. And one thing, when I set up an anchor, I never want to put my carabiners through the bottom links or the wrap rings, because I need to feed my rope through that, and that's just going to be awkward. So step number 1 is right now my safety's on the rope. I need to transfer myself from the rope to the anchor. You've got your fancy Petzl device. A lot of times I use a double length sling. PASs are really good for this. And I'll bring a PAS out sometimes while I'm sport climbing, but I like kind of multi-use, so I just use a sling, double length sling, and I girth hitch it to myself. So super simple to attach myself. I can just clip my 2 strands up here. I'm locked. The thing about this, since we have a quad anchor that attaches these 2 bolts together, is I can just clip into the quad and I'm good. I'm never gonna trust my life to a piece of gear I don't own, which is a bolt. So right now I'm actually attached to both of these bolts through the quad anchor. If we were up here on an anchor that was maybe like 2 draws with lockers, I'd have to clip into this chain and that chain to be attached to them, because these 2 draws would be separate from each other. I just attach myself to the anchor, and now anytime I transfer my life from one system to another, I'm gonna double check first. And sometimes I'll even talk to myself and verbalize it in an anchor, because this is the point where like on our own, we don't have a partner to double check us. So cool, I've got a good girth hitch here. I am locked into the anchor on 2 strands. Anna, you can take me off belay. Okay. So first thing I wanna do is I'm gonna pull up a little slack. So step 1 was transferring my life from the rope to the anchor. Step 2 is going to be rigging the rope, and then step 3 is transferring my life back from the anchor to the rope. So we're in step 2, rigging the rope right now. I'm gonna have to untie for this, so I wanna make sure I don't lose my rope, because then my friends would laugh at me and probably sit at the base. Knowing my friends, they'd make me sit up there for a couple hours and then they'd come and get me. So that's never happened, and I really don't wanna go through that. So I can tie a knot in this. I can do an overhand or an 8 on a bite. I prefer just to clove hitch it, throw it on a carabiner, so I'm not gonna lose it. Now you can untie. I'll feed it through my rings.
Meanwhile, if you're the belayer, you should stay. Don't like take off.
I'm going to the bathroom. I'll be right back.
You know what I mean? Until
I trust
they
you.
just stay around.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a bad idea at all. And if I'm actually, when I rappel, I'm going to use my own backup. But if I wasn't doing that, I could ask Hannah when I rappel to give me a fireman's belay. Always good to have a backup when you're rappelling. Like, rappelling is where a lot of climbers get hurt and killed. So my rope's through here. I want to close the system now, so I'm just going to tie a barrel knot. And now this way, I'm still going to hold on to this, but I can come out of here, and if I did lose this, like especially with these chains, there's no way that's going to go through. That could feasibly go through a wrap ring, but it's probably going to get hung up. So now, I want to rig the rope to where both ends are on the ground. So depending on how long this rope is, I might have to go all the way to the middle of the rope. What I'd have to do is pull up this end all the way, and then the way I'm coiling this, coil both sides of it, pulling it through, so I know when it goes tight, that is the middle. A little bit more work. You know, if I can see the ground, no big deal. Then I can just toss it down and see that it's on the ground. If I can't see the ground, I don't know where the middle is, and my partner is still there, I could communicate with my partner to find that. So I pull enough rope through for the ground, throw it down, rope. Awesome, my rope is set up. So I'm gonna set up an extended rappel with a backup, which is a pretty standard way a lot of people do things. So I can do what's called a friction hitch off my belay loop. And there's different types of friction hitches. I'm gonna use what's called an auto block. So I'm gonna take both strands. So this is called a prusik loop, and it's just 5 or 6 millimeter accessory cord. I find a good length for this is 48 inches, and then the ends tied together with a double fisherman's. They make one called the hollow block that's kind of more of a braided, a little more expensive, kind of a fancy one. But yeah, just 5 or 6 mil accessory cord. I'm gonna start with it through a carabiner, and I always like to make sure I'm keeping my knots in this, like out in the middle of the system. So I'm gonna start with it right by the carabiner. Take my 2 ropes, and then with 2 ropes, probably about 3 wraps is the amount of friction I want. 2, 3. Actually, these ropes are a little slick. I'm gonna go 1 more. 4. Lock back the other end, goes back through the carabiner. I lock that. So this, if I pull, is gonna hold the rope, and if I just push down on it, the rope slides through. The auto block is a friction hitch with the least amount of friction, and it's going to be below my rappel device, so I don't need a whole lot of holding power. I'm not like falling right on this and having it hold my body weight. I just need it to act like a hand under a belay device in case something happens to me. So if I've got all this weight hanging from the rope, one of the cool things about this too is I can just pull up slack, and if that rope's pulling down, it's going to keep slack here and make it easier to get my rappel device on the rope. Since I've got this off my belay loop, I don't want it going up into my device, so I can use it on this extension. Works very well with the PAS. I think you can rig it away with your Petzl thing, Jill. So I clip through both these strands. I'm gonna go teeth down. That's more friction. If you've got this style device and you're a lighter person, you can go teeth up, which will be less friction. Take a bite on both ropes, make sure everything's nice and clean. Into my rappel device, and then very important, make sure I clip both strands. Lock my carabiner. Cool, now I can test this system out. Sweet, so I'm no longer on this anchor, I'm just on my rappel device with this, this backup, and so I'm actually weighting the system. So I just finished step 2, I rigged the rappel. So step 3 is I'm putting my life back on the rope. Again, I'm gonna double check. I can either start at the bottom or start at the top. I like to start at the top. So the rope's through both my rings. I'm captured on both strands in the carabiner. I'm captured here, I'm captured there, I've got to back up. Sweet, I can come out of the anchor now. If I put this back to my belay loop, it actually gives me a little bit of redundancy since I'm attached on. So now I can do what I came up here to do, actually clean the anchor. It's always important to remember that because it's kind of easy to forget sometimes. Get back to the ground, where's the anchor? And now I can I like to go a hand down below my friction hitch and then use my top hand just to unlock it and then keep it unlocked. And I can rappel down if I let go. You never want to like just blindly let go and trust it. You get like different sheaths, if they're super slick, you might not get as good a friction and like need an extra wrap. So it's always good to test these out a little bit with this specific friction hitch and specific rope to make sure it is locking. If it ever is a little slippery and you need to stop, you can just pull up like that and that usually engages it. If let's say maybe I toss the ropes and they're tangled around something and I need to like mess with that and recoil the ropes or some sort of shenanigans, an extra safety thing I could do is just tie a overhand on a bite. That's called a catastrophe knot. Now if I was like doing something here for a while and I like spun and hit this by accident, no way it's gonna go past that knot too. There's actually another way to do this that, but it's got kind of a weak link to the system. If I didn't have an extension here and I wanted to rappel right off my harness, I can put the friction hitch on my leg loop. And I actually do use this technique quite often. If I go off my leg loop, I want to go on the inside by my inner thigh. Why would I not want to put this over here? Because it could like undo my buckle and my leg loop could come undone. So if you ever do this technique, you want to go off the inner part of your harness right here.
Right, the strong part?
Yeah.
So if you are having someone down below do the fireman's belay,
Uh-huh.
are you having them, since you did down the middle, you're having them hold both?
Both ropes, correct. So they're just like your brake hand. If you lost control, like when I want to stop, I pull down on the brake strands. So they'd be doing the same thing. If I wanted to stop, they'd pull down on the brake strands and they'd stop me. So I can do my friction hitch down here. So if we looked at what I was just talking about, like what do you gain and what do you lose? Less piece of equipment, faster, like a couple things that are pretty cool. What there is one major weakness to this system. If I turn my body that way, this can get sucked up, it can get jammed in there, it can make it not work. So if I'm doing it this way, I have to be very conscious of my body position, not to spin my hips that way. And maybe if a rock did hit me and I like hung that way, that could undo it. So there are a couple like pretty big weaknesses in that system.